Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that brings you inspiration, transformation, and leadership. We're helping you connect the dots, see the blind spots, and get unstuck so you can go out there and create more sales, more growth, more profitability, more importantly, so you can have a bigger impact, a bigger reach, and make a bigger contribution. Speaking of contribution, here's a question for you. What do you think football and business have in common? In fact, what do you think that football and business and how they can complement each other to help build leaders, to help build champions in communities, all around the world? Well, today you're going to find out from one of the leading experts that's not only building young men, but building a great business, helping build men as leaders, as champions, as business pros, and a whole lot more. His name is Coach Maddox. He's the head football coach at Victory Christian High School in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He's the co-owner and camp curriculum director for National Football Academies. He's considered one of the leading experts in QB training and offensive tactics in the country. He's a 2-time best-selling author, creator of the revolutionary R4 system. Now, a little story. I got introduced to Dub and his work about 6 months ago. One of our coaches had stumbled into his material and said, you got to check this out. And just being the kind of person that I am, wanting to surround ourselves with bigger, better people, I started doing some exploration, got into his books, got into his training, and lo and behold, here we are having a conversation today to talk about business and football and how it works and how it can work for you. And if you're a parent, I want to share with you, you're going to want to tune into this. If you're a business leader, you're going to want to tune into this. You've heard follow your passion, right? You're going to learn about some of the mistakes that Dub's made, some of the successes that he has, his bigger impact that he's looking to make, and maybe you can help. You know why? Do you know some kids that need some mentorship, have better access to the best training in the world? He's created a platform to help make sure that happens, not only locally with his local team, but also nationally. And you're going to hear more about that. So, Coach Maddox, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. Thanks. I'm excited to be on here today.
Same here, brother. I want to jump right into it. Everybody usually has a story of why they're doing what they're doing. Why are you doing what you're doing as a coach and the developer, creator, co-founder of the R4 system?
Yeah, well, it started at an early age for me. I remember going to my first football game when I was 5 years old, and I remember being in the stands with my dad. It was our hometown football game, and I don't remember much as a kid, but my first probably vivid memory is about a 15-second clip of a group of about 40 players walking out of this locker room into the north end zone and huddling up right before the game, and all these people line up and create a tunnel on the field, and the band starts playing a song. The lights are on. Everybody stands to their feet cheering for this group of young men running on the field, and at the end of this tunnel that's made, there's this large banner with writing on. I couldn't really read at that point, but they burst through this piece of paper, and I thought that was the coolest thing that I'd ever seen. And I said, I want to be like those guys when I get older. And from that moment on, I was just always drawn to the game of football. And as I started to play when I was a young player, just just getting mentored by older men and just being encouraged, and the lessons I learned from my coaches growing up, it just really impacted me in a positive way. And I learned a lot about myself as a young man, and I just wanted to be able to give that back to young kids, what was given to me, that special gift. So that's really what set me on a course to become a football coach. And as I got into the coaching world, I learned real quickly it was a lot different than playing. And so that really set me on a journey to find the reasons why behind everything that's being taught. When I started coaching, when you ask coaches, questions and question, why we run this scheme or why do we run this play, you'll find that's very hard to articulate the answers. And so I just really was just always inquisitive and always want to know the deeper meanings behind why we do things and the tactics behind it all. So that's really of why I'm passionate about football. I think it's a great game that teaches servant leadership. And really, I think we're all hardwired and created to be in that role as men. And so I use the game to teach that from that platform, but I also enjoy the X's and O's and the strategy of it as well.
That's amazing. And, I've gotten a chance to go through some of the R4 training material. Our coaches doing that as well. One of the things that jumps out is the importance of alignment, right? Not only with player, quarterback, if it's quarterback, receiver, offensive coordinator, coach. Speak to the idea of alignment and also how important alignment is as well beyond football to business too.
Yeah, I think really what you'll find when you go into great businesses or you do a deep dive into a great company, or when you're just in an environment and you see something's different, something special. One of the main things you'll discover is that everyone in that company or on that team, they're speaking the same language. And so we're real big on developing a common language. And the common language is critical in football because in football, we're making decisions under pressure, and we have to be able to communicate a lot with the little. So one of the key components of R4 was developed based on the study of what military does. In the military, for example, when you go to become a fighter pilot in the Air Force or the Navy, they have a system called the brevity code system. And so they have a language that's built, and you have to learn these codes because when you are at 30,000 feet flying at Mach 2 or whatever, and you have to make rapid decisions, you can't speak in 2 or 3 paragraphs. You have to say those in like one or two words. So that really spoke to me because football's the same way. On Friday night when you're in a game and you're having to communicate, all the things that happen in 3 to 4 seconds, how do you extract or how do you filter that information to your players and coaches in a quick way where everyone's on the same page? So common language is really big, and I think that helps you align. And what happens when you see teams that don't do very well or you're in companies that really struggle, everybody's speaking a different language. And so I think, as a business owner or if you're on a sports team, you really got to do a long look in the mirror and make sure, have we defined what these words mean, and do we have a process that can say a lot with a little, and can we build that brevity code system?
And as you're watching or listening right now, what would it be worth for you to get your team in alignment, to get them on the same page, to have the same languaging so that you can go build more momentum, create more impact, to create more opportunity, to have a bigger impact and reach in your community? Well, if that's something that interests you, then you're going to want to stick around for this next segment where we go into business growth strategies. How has Dub become a 2-time best-selling author, now on Audible, also has an amazing online training program where he's coaching thousands of people all over the country simultaneously with his system. He's got a certification program. This while also being an offensive coordinator as a football coach. That is what you're going to learn here in the next few minutes when we come back with Dub Maddox on growthtofreedom.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of growthtofreedom.com. Are you struggling to get a steady flow of new clients every day, or maybe hit a plateau or hit a wall in growing your business? Well, let's help you solve this problem today. Let's review your business and have a conversation. You can do that for free today at breakthroughstrategycall.com. That's breakthroughstrategycall.com. In addition, if you're looking for a simple way to implement some of what we've been talking about in today's episode, then I want to encourage you to get our free small business toolkit. You can get that at activate.breakthrough3x.com. That's activate.breakthrough3x.com. If you'd like access to the special resources and all the show notes for this special episode, make sure to visit growthtofreedom.com. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com. Now, Dub, as you've built this business, I'm fascinated, number one, by football just in general. And I'm biased because I've got my 12-year-old son who's playing, and he's really excited about it right now. And on top of that, the business side of it, I meet a lot of consultants, a lot of coaches, a lot of experts who go, I want to get my book. I want to write a book in the first place, let alone 2 books, one book. I want to go build a course. And here you are, almost like part-time, you've built this publishing platform that's impacting thousands and thousands of people. Like, talk about your methodology for going about creating your publishing platform, if you could, in a couple minutes.
Yeah, it's not like you just set out one day and decide, hey, I'm going to write books and do an Audible. It really just starts with just the first one started. We developed this system. I started developing it in 2007. We created a 3 DVD system that explained just at that time one facet of R4, which all R4 is. It's a decision-making system that teaches quarterbacks how to make rapid decisions, correct decisions under pressure. It's essentially a feedback loop that informs their decision faster so they can learn faster from mistakes. It's a process that allows the coach to connect and see the same visually what the quarterback is. It gets them on the same page. And there's a big disconnect between coaches and quarterbacks because the coach sees the field one way, a quarterback sees the field the other. So anytime interceptions happen or the play does not turn out like the coach wants, if he doesn't have a process that can allow him to read the reality of what he's seeing and have the language to, be able to interject that, then there's going to be a fracture there. And so that's where really the genesis of it began in 2007. So we created a DVD system that really took off. A lot of people had success with it. And so they were wanting more. And as we got into the years, the system kept evolving. We kept growing it. And so we decided to sit down. I decided to sit down and write a book on just what the DVD system was built upon, but there was more components that we added. And so I sat down to write a book in 2010, and it was the most difficult thing I've ever done. It's like, you just got to sit your keyboard and essentially bleed out. I mean, it was tough. I mean, it was hard. It took, probably a couple of years to really get that thing going. And I swore to myself I would never write a book again after that first round, but was able to find a publisher, was able to get it all done, diagrams, and it was a painful experience. But once we got it out, you saw another, leap in just the system getting out there and people just raving about it. So I didn't write another book until 2 years ago. And so between the time the first book came out and we decided to sit down and write another one, technology was changing. It was changing the game. And so what we saw is that DVDs were now going away. Everything was becoming online. And really in the coaching world, there was really nothing out there where you could access online. But coaches were saying, hey, I don't want DVDs. Do you have anything online? So we decided to sit down, and the whole time this is going through, our force continued to evolve and grow. So it was going from a quarterback-centric process to now a entirely coaching system process. What I mean by that is it went just from a tool to help quarterbacks to a tool to help everyone on the offense, offensive linemen, receivers, running backs, and to help coaches. Because as a coach, as a play caller, you're having to do what a quarterback does every play. You're having to see what the defense is doing, call the correct play, and if that play doesn't work, you have to immediately know why and communicate the fixes. And so we saw that the system that was used to help quarterbacks can really help coaches as well. So we probably spent 2 or 3 years building out an entire infrastructure. It's essentially an operating system that can accelerate any offense in any level of football. And so we started to put that online. So we developed an online platform where I could create essentially teaching modules that are 15 to 20 minutes long. And it was basically an online curriculum that can allow coaches to go to a one-stop shop and learn how to become a football coach. And so that's really where the online business took off. And as we started creating that, we created so much content. Coaches were asking for it in manual form. Can you give me the manual that I can use to study this outside of what the video that I'm seeing? So I decided to sit down at my chair again and bleed out. And we wrote the second book that was called Adapt or Die, and it was built on military strategy that the Marines learned in Fallujah, Iraq. And what they learned there was that they had to change the way they were fighting because the insurgents there at the time, the Taliban, was fighting in an unorthodox way that they had never seen before. So they had to create an entirely new strategy that where they could change on a dime because this opponent that they were facing could shape shift and maneuver faster than they could keep up. So they had to really go back and create an entirely new language, an entirely new process on how they operated. And we were seeing the same innovations in football where the defenses are becoming more complex. They're able to change faster because, once again, technology, the ability to share information now is allowing the high school coach to do things that they're doing at the highest levels. And so what we needed to do is create a manual to help talk about the evolutions of that. So I wrote the second book, Adapt or Die, based on that. And that took off. And then this last year, I just released the final book, which is called What is Open, which builds out how to game plan and play call for the offensive system. So that's really where we're at. And if you'd have told me I'd have done that 10 years ago, I'd have said you're crazy. But really, just for anybody that has that passion or that intrigue, basically you just got to sit down and just it starts one day at a time. And, I would sit down on my computer. Some days I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to write a paragraph. Some days it'd be just a page. Some days I get in the flow and it would be 3 pages. But I knew every day I was going to have something extra written on that paper. And then over time, next thing you know, you got a book.
That's amazing. I mean, there's so many layers of genius in what Dub just shared with you as you're listening right now. And I hope that you got it. And by the way, thanks for making us part of your day. If you want to come back to this episode, you can do that at growthtofreedom.com/273. That's growthtofreedom.com/273. If you never want to miss an episode, you can go to growthtofreedom.com/subscribe. I hope you've got a pen, a piece of paper to ideally extract some of the wisdom of, think about it, in your business right now, right? What would happen for you if you built your operating system? How would it get you and your team on the same page, right? It can seem daunting. Oh my God, I got to create an operating system for my sales or my marketing or my operations or finance and more, right? But if you just take it one little bite at a time, 1 page a day, when you look back over a couple of years, not only will you have a good operating system, you just might find yourself having 2 best-selling books, an entire online course that others refer to. One of our clients that we're working with, Dub, his name is Mike Aguilero. He's brilliant. Like, I see just so many parallels between you and Mike from the way of thinking about building a business and growing a business and also replicating it. And you can learn from that too, right? You can learn from that too. I mean, if you're a football fan, it's one thing that you can be fascinated by learning the advanced strategies, yet so simple, right, to put in place starting today. Like in minutes, you could start implementing, your quarterback, your team, your son, your child, whatever, right? Starting implementing today. But on the other side of it, if you're a business owner, if you're a founder, if you're a CEO, what could you learn from Dub and his experience of how he's grown this publishing? And again, he's a full-time coach besides, right? So, I mean, I just admire and respect, Dub, what you're doing, how you're building it. If people want to learn more about your system, right, for their kids or in their community where they want to make sure to get their, youth coaches or their high school coaches connected to your system, can you share where people can go learn more about you?
Yeah, our website is at r4footballsystem.com. I'm also on Twitter at Coach Dub Maddox. Those are probably the 2 best areas to reach out to me, and then also see our product. If you go onto our website, we have a blog there. So I'll pull out periodic articles on just some innovative things that we're working on, and then we have some free videos, and then we have also the subscription component that you can sign up to get the materials online and order our books as well.
And I want to encourage you to go to r4footballsystems.com, r4footballsystems.com. I've gone through dozens and dozens of the videos, several of the modules in the program already. His team, by the way, I just want to speak to your team, Dub. You may not hear this all the time, but you have one of your team members that I've had a lot of communication with, Johnny, who just does a phenomenal job. And based on what I see in his interaction, in the forums and other places, it seems like you've got a good one there. So not only are you, talking what you do, but you've got a team helping support what you do to help you have a bigger impact. And again, as you're listening or watching, that starts with the way you think about your business, the mindset of success from day one, right? An operating system for success. So go check out what they're doing at r4footballsystems.com or reach out to Coach Dub at Coach Dub Maddox on Twitter. Coach Dub, I want to talk about decision-making, right? I don't know about you, but I, in many ways, feel like the traditional education system actually teaches kids how not to think, how not to make decisions, right? Waiting for the authority figure to give them all the answers, right? Versus having critical thinking skills. Speak to the idea of how you see football playing a role and also a system, an operating system like this to help people, kids in this example, be able to make rapid decisions and how that translates and helps them in their future.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most important thing you could teach your kid is making sure that he's looking through the right lens. And so that's what R4 is. It's being able to go into any environment, extract the most important information, and to have frames of reference that are built to help process the reality of what's occurring. And then from that, you can make the best decision and find the open space and move the chains. I mean, that's the goal in football. So basically, in order to make rapid decisions, we call it rapid cognition, you have to be able to have just a dense library of explicit information. So my job as a coach is to take years and years of experience and knowledge and distill it down into an implicit process where my 16-year-old quarterback can understand that information and be able to pull out the key parts and know exactly the answer or the solution to the problem that's presented. And the problem is there's a bottleneck between all that 20 years of knowledge to a easy approach to pull that most important information out. So what we had to create was we had to teach our quarterbacks, teach our football players, teach our coaches the non-negotiables. So you can't find the answers or find this process when you go to experts within your field. So my journey to this began to find out the experts in my field of football to find out how they do it. So for example, a quick story, my first year coaching quarterbacks, we were really good. I had a good quarterback. We got into the playoffs, and in the playoffs, there's a lot of pressure because you lose, you go home. So I had this really talented quarterback that was making great reads all year, and we call a simple curl flat concept. And the linebacker that he's supposed to read just stands there, and it freaked my quarterback out. So he throws it right to the guy. It's an interception, and now we're down by 14 points. And he comes to the sideline. He goes, "Coach, I have no idea what I'm seeing out there. I never saw a kid that had this much ice in his veins." I mean, he was a cool, calm, and collected customer. He was a very talented kid. He was done. I mean, he was done. And I didn't have a process to build him, to pull him out of that hole. And I never wanted to be in that situation again. So it got me thinking, how do I teach what is open? Like, because that's really the most important thing to know from the offensive standpoint. What is open? You know, I've got to get the ball to the open space. So how do I teach my quarterback to know what open is? So I bought a plane ticket. I put a couple guys on my schedule. I went and found the best offensive minds in football at the college level, and I made a trip itinerary to their spring ball schedule. And so I went to 3 or 4 places, and my goal was to find the answer. And so I was lucky enough to get in some rooms with some of these offensive coordinators at the time. And I remember being in the room with this one guy in particular who's written a bunch of books, and he's considered to be one of the best offensive minds in the history of football. And so he was writing up this play and diagramming it, and he had all these, crazy illustrations, and he was writing a mile a minute. And I just paused and I said, how do you know what open is? How do you teach your quarterback to know what open is? How does he know that dig route's open? And he just paused for about 10 seconds, and he could not give me an answer. And he just looks at me and he goes, he just knows. And so I was defeated because I was like, I was like, here, I'm going to get my answer. I'm finally going to know. And he goes, he just knows. And so that left me just still searching. And I don't have a guy in high school that just knows. I have to train him. So how do I do it? So I decided to go outside the domain of football. And I think this is what you got to do. If you're a business person and you're looking for a solution and you're trying to build a system and you're going to these experts and they cannot give you the why behind what they do, they just, maybe they have the talent or they have enough money just to work around these issues that you're having. You need to go outside your domain and find someone who's doing excellent in a field that has a lot of parallels to yours. And you need to see what they're doing. And then from that, you can extract a system or take those components and apply it to your domain. So what I started looking for is, well, okay, who in the real world has to make rapid decisions under pressure where there's life is on the line? Because it doesn't get any more pressure than that. So I looked at firefighters, emergency room doctors, fighter pilots. And so when you study the best in those domains, what you'll find is they're trained to go into an environment and they cannot think about all the 150 things that could go wrong. They have to know the 3 to 4 things that matter most, and those are called non-negotiables. So what we started looking at from a defensive perspective is, okay, what are the 3 to 4 things that my quarterback needs to know at the most on a given play that give him the most important information? And I think that's the really critical part into making decisions is when you go in and you're making decisions, particularly ones under pressure where, a lot of weight weighs in the balance, you can't worry about everything that could go wrong, or you can't try to figure everything out. It's okay, what matters most here? And when I know what to look for, I can now cut out all the noise, and I can now gauge from those frames of reference, okay, what is actually going on here? Next thing you need is a common language to define those frames of reference. So frames of reference are big for us. I think you need to identify the frames of reference, and frames of reference allow you to create mental models of the reality that you're seeing. So, and there's frames of reference in business. There's things you can't work around. I mean, so for example, the frames of reference in football are space, time, and talent. Those you have to work within those constraints. I mean, you cannot ignore talent, you can't ignore space, you can't ignore time. So when you know that and you know how to manipulate those and work within those, you can now make better decisions through identifying the non-negotiables, having frames of reference with a common language that explains what you're seeing, and then you have to have a process that's sequential. It's essentially what we call the process of self-correction. Our quarterbacks and coaches in whatever business model you're using, the process you use to extract that information has to be consistent. You can't have 24 different if-then statements. It has to be sequential and it has to be concise. So a quarterback or a business person can self-correct if they mess up. And that completes the feedback loop. So mistakes are going to be made, but if we can't learn from those mistakes, we're going to keep repeating them. And so I think that's a real key component that you need with whatever system you're creating is those three things.
And as you're watching or listening right now, can you start to see how this would translate to your business, right? It's not having hundreds of options or dozens of options. It's narrowing it down to simplicity. I grabbed this Rubik's Cube, right? This 3x3x3 cube. Google supercomputers evaluated. There's actually over 20 million combinations to solve the puzzle. And then they also evaluated and found there's only about 8 to 10 moves that actually matter. And not only does it work here, it works in football, and it'll work for your business too. I encourage you, if some of what Dub has been sharing with you intrigues you, not just from football, but from leadership, servant leadership, building a better business, go check out what they're doing at R4 Football System. Talk about learning from outside of your industry. You probably learn a lot outside of your industry by learning from someone who's one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world, at teaching and simplifying offensive decision-making right here, right now, right? I mean, in fact, going through your system, what I love, you talk about 5 tubes as a quarterback to be reviewing pre-snap. You talk about the hard line. Are they above or below it, right? As a quarterback to make the decision. Where are they lined up in the different realms? Are they over outside? Are they over inside? Are they over or under inside and at the third step of the drop, right? Which is related to timing, right? Those are 3 critical factors. But see, if you're a football fan, you want to have a better experience, like probably the best experience you've ever had at watching a game and observing a game, and actually, way beyond fantasy football, go through some of their basic training that he's got available. We'll put some links here on top of it. Again, you can also go to r4footballsystems.com. Start learning some of the basics of this, because it'll make the game so much more enjoyable when you start understanding the chess game that's actually really happening, from run to pass, what's open, what's not, and a whole lot more. And hey, you're here for a reason. You're here to build and grow your business. You want to have a bigger impact. Go check out what Dub is doing. Why? To see how that can translate for what you're doing. Now, Dub, as you've been on this journey, right? You've got so many fascinating stories. Let's go to a place where, can you remember like your biggest, maybe failure or biggest mistake that you made on this journey, and what you learned from it, and what our viewers can take from that too?
Yeah, I think this is a trap, we all fall into, but early on, we started to get some momentum, and we were starting to, get out there, and people were starting to get their eyes on R4 and use it. And so you start to look at what other people are doing. So a lot of coaches were creating other types of systems. And so you would start to see some college guys create, and they were creating some offensive systems and selling it online and doing really well. And so what they were selling, though, was more of a playbook. And so they were selling an offensive playbook, where R4 is an operating system that can accelerate any playbook. And so I started to have people in my ear saying, you got to get a playbook out. You got to get a playbook out. That's what everybody really wants. And so I started to build that and try to get that out. And I got distracted. I probably wasted a year or 2 of my time building this playbook and trying to get it out. And finally, I just thought, you know what? There's so many people out there that are selling playbooks, and everybody runs the same plays. The secret is not in the plays. We all have a playbook per se. There's a playbook for business. I mean, the things that business do, there's a playbook out there. But it's the systems that accelerate that playbook is really where the secret sauce is at. And so I decided to, I'm putting this thing on the shelf. I'm going to get back to what matters most here and what the genesis of R4 really was. And I'm just going to dive deep, because when you go to football clinics, when you hear coaches talk, everything is so surface level. It's all about the X's and O's. And so there is no place to go to do a deep dive of the inner workings of what makes a play successful, or why you should call this play, or how do you, depending on the person you have, how do you know if that play is going to work? Because that's a big deal in the football world is, this play may work for this team, but it's not going to work for me because I don't have those same types of players. So what process do I have that informs that for me? How do I know? And so I learned, like I said, it wasn't a difficult lesson. It was just, I wasted a lot of time trying to chase what everybody was doing. I needed to go back to blue water. No one was in this space. No one had what we were working on, and no one could go as deep as we could. And so I went back to that blue water, and that's really why we're at where we're at today, because it's just, you can't find that anywhere.
And as you're listening or watching right now, what can you take? Do you face, the potential of competitors, right? The fact that, they're morphing what we're doing to a degree and feeling a little bit of the pressure and the noise to kind of keep up with them. Well, what if you took Dub's approach here? If I can, summarize it. It's not about sameness. It's about the differentiation, right? What makes you unique? What makes you different, right? There's a big difference in his world between a playbook and an operating system. And here's another key. An operating system is principle-based, and it's timeless. A playbook is timely, which means it's tactical. It'll come and go just like leaves blowing in the wind, right? Is that really what you want? If you want tactical, then focus on the playbook. But if you want strategy, you want principle-based models, focus on the operating system, the alignment, right? Those sorts of things. Now, Dub, what is something I should have asked you that we haven't had a chance to cover in our time today?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. That's your job, man. Yeah.
Who's your favorite quarterback to watch right now?
Right now,
and why?
I've been fascinated with just Tom Brady the last couple of years, just because of what he's doing at his age level, and his competitiveness. And really, he's a guy that I just admire, because he's never stopped learning. He's always willing to learn, and he's always working. So that's been fascinating for me. I think, young guys like Patrick Mahomes, very talented guys, are fun to watch. But I like more of the guys that aren't as just gifted athletically, and how they use their mind and use their work ethic and use their character to overcome their talent deficiencies. And the ability just to see a guy that can pull guys together and make, I think the key, any great leader or business person, the ones that are the best, it's when they step in that huddle, they step in that room, they elevate everyone's game. So they make everyone better. So I'm always intrigued, and I like studying those types of players.
That's amazing. What are 1 to 3 action steps that you hope our viewers, our listeners, take from our time together today?
Yeah, I think for the business people, I think it's the one thing is nothing great is ever achieved alone, and you need people around you that are better than you. That's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned, is that that you have to find people, like I said, like we talked about earlier, with the right mindset. Many people, when they're hiring, they look for experience. And my challenge to you is, don't get so caught up of where they've been or what they've done. When you interview them, when you look for these people, don't look at where they've been or the experience they've had. Interview them and ask different questions and find their mindset. And what we're looking for in that, we're looking for are these, do they have a growth mindset? Are they passionate about what they're doing? What's their character? Those types of things. So I think that's one thing. I think another thing is to make sure, if you're starting out in business or you're starting out, I think it's very good for you, if you're a younger entrepreneur, or you're just someone that's going into a field you're passionate, you have all these plans. I think putting your timeline on hold per se, because I think we're so caught up in titles, we're so caught, we have our track, we have our plan for where we're going to be in 10 years. I think it's important to make sure that we put ourselves under people of great leadership and we learn as much as we can. I was lucky enough coming out of college to get hired on by one of the toughest but most brilliant head coaches in high school football history. And I worked for him for 4 years, and it was a very difficult working environment because he challenged me. He held me accountable. A lot of guys couldn't have survived in that situation, but I'm glad I was able to fight through it because I learned how to coach through him. And then my second coach I worked for is another Hall of Fame high school coach. I worked for him for 13 years. And just, I think it's important for people to, again, don't be afraid of putting yourself beneath and putting maybe your long-term plans on hold. And knowledge is power. Learn from people that have gone ahead of you and find a great mentor. That's really the two things probably. You can't do it alone. Find people and hire people with the right mindset. And if you're starting out, I would find the best program. If I was starting over again, I would go and try to get under Bill Belichick and just be his janitor. I mean, I would start at the lowest position, and whatever I had to do, I would just start at that entry level and do the best I can and try to move up and learn and extract as much as I can from that.
That's great wisdom and great advice. Tying into that, I've got two coaches, one named Brad and one named Brennan, who, these guys I've gotten a chance to know over the last couple years. They come with growth mindset. They're givers. They have no kids in the game. They're young guys in their 20s, and they're hungry and they want to learn. They've recently dove into your system and learning it and working to master. Like, knowing what you know today, how the game has changed. Football, even at a high school level, has become high profile, especially in states where you're at, like Oklahoma, Texas, California, Arizona, etc. Knowing what you know, what advice would you give to, like, these two guys? One has done some volunteering as a high school receivers coach. The other is trying to, work his way in. What advice, if you were them, knowing what you know now, like, what would be an approach you would take to try to connect, to live the dream, to ultimately become either a head coach or a high-profile offensive coordinator?
Yeah, again, I would reiterate what I just said. I would try to find a program in my area and try to find a head coach that has, that is a character. He has character, and he's been winning, and he's in it for the right reasons. And I would get in any role I could, just to get my foot in the door. And I would try to attach myself at his hip and serve that guy and learn as much as I can. And all the great coaches I know have started down that path at some point, and they were willing to do the jobs that no one wants to do. I mean, get in there and do the jobs that no one wants to do. Like, I would volunteer for those and do those really well. And over time, you will gain more and more responsibility. And I'm telling you, my brother works for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and we had a conversation the other day, and he's high up in the Thunder organization. And so every year they get 20 interns that come in that all want to work for a professional sports team. And out of those 20 interns, there might be one job that might come open. And so what he was talking to me recently was like, you would not believe in today's, society, the way it is with these young kids coming out of college, is you can get a job for an entry-level position in an NBA program if you could just show up every day on time, listen, and just work. I mean, it's very hard to find people coming into the workforce today that are willing to do those three simple things well. So my point is, if you can train your kids, or you can train your young people coming in, just to have, this mindset of, hey, if I just show up every day on time, if I listen, and if I work and do the things that other people don't want to do, there is not a high there. It's hard to find people that can do that these days. And so I think that's what I would encourage those guys to do. I think it's a real easy to move up and to find those positions, because it's just hard to find people that are willing to do those.
That is some great advice. So Brennan, Brad, there's some great advice from one of the top minds in football today. Sharing that direct wisdom, not only for you, but also all of our viewers, all of our listeners as well. And as you're listening right now, if something that Dub has shared with you intrigues you, again, go check out R4 Football Systems. Get his books. Get his book on Audible. Even if you're not in football, there's so many lessons on leadership, servant leadership, growth, development and a whole lot more training that you can literally take from this practice of football and bring it over into your business as well. And check out his business model. It's a fascinating model when you really stop and think of what his number one focus is. And now this publishing business that he's built, he does clinics all over the country. He set up a model where he's partnered with a group where him and his organization do clinics all over the country. Now, I don't know the rules of what you have to be or what you don't have to be, whether you have to be a football coach, don't have to be a football. But regardless, I would encourage you when you go to R4 Football Systems, dive in. I would get his program. Why? It'll translate. You'll have more fun if you're a football fan to learn about football. Number 3, with clinics all over the country, I would go find a way to find yourself in a clinic. Either yourself, if you've got kids, you got community members, to get them over to check out what they're doing. What would it be worth to have kids that you mentor potentially learn rapid decision making, right? Because in life, at the end of the day, we're all the CEO or quarterback of our families, aren't we? This translates not only in the huddle on the football field, but it translates in building men and building people at home. And if that's something you're excited about, I encourage you, go check out what he's doing at r4footballsystems.com. You can hit him up on Twitter at Coach Dub Maddox. That's at Coach Dub Maddox as well. Any parting words, Dub, before we go? This has been awesome. I love it. I could literally do this. We could do this for hours and have a blast. At least
it's been a blessing to be on here. I really enjoyed. I'm fascinated like you are. I think with the parallels of sport and the business world, and I think when you can look outside your domain, whether if you're in business, look into those sports teams. What are they doing? How are they operating at a high level? And then vice versa for me. My biggest answers in the ability to develop this operating system wasn't found in the football realm. I had to look outside of it. So I think that's the big takeaway. And telling these stories is reinvigorating me on that. Just reminded me of how it was all built.
He's Dub Maddox. I encourage you, go check out what he's doing, r4footballsystems.com. Most importantly, I've got 4.5 pages of notes from our conversation here today. The big mistakes that he learned, how he sees football and business and life intertwining, the idea of the same language, alignment, core values, getting everybody on the same page, right? Rapid decision-making, what that means, and a way to think about doing it. It's not having 20 choices, 100 choices, thousands of choices. It's crystallizing down to 3 or 4 simple choices overall. That and a whole lot more. And by the way, if you want to come back to this episode to extract some of the wisdom that he shared, you can do that at growthtofreedom.com/273. That's growthtofreedom.com/273. You never want to miss an episode. Go to growthtofreedom.com/subscribe. That's growthtofreedom.com/subscribe. Seize the day. Make it a great week. We'll see you next time on growthtofreedom.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of growthtofreedom.com. Are you struggling to get a steady flow of new clients every day? Or maybe hit a plateau or hit a wall in growing your business? Well, let's help you solve this problem today. Let's review your business and have a conversation. You can do that for free today at breakthroughstrategycall.com. That's breakthroughstrategycall.com. In addition, if you're looking for a simple way to implement some of what we've been talking about in today's episode, then I want to encourage you to get our free small business toolkit. You can get that at activate.breakthrough3x.com. That's activate.breakthrough3x.com. If you'd like access to the special resources and all the show notes for this special episode, make sure to visit growthtofreedom.com.